Perfect. Okay, looks like we are live. So, for those joining us, welcome back to Faith in Question. I think today we've got another interesting discussion for you, and I'm joined today by Eric, who is an ex-Catholic. And I think we've got some big questions we're going to talk about. I think you all will find this to be a fascinating discussion. So, as normal, all the usual YouTube stuff. If you enjoy this conversation, give it a thumbs up. That helps the channel out a lot. It gets this conversation spread much more deeply to others who might benefit from its message as well. So, appreciate that. We're going to take a minute to get to know Eric. I think you all know my background by this point, but if you're new here, you can think of me as just really a skeptic today who's asking questions about the faith that I came up in over the last 35 years. I was born and raised in a very conservative Baptist Christian home that had just a lot of rules and regulations, legalism throughout. I mean, we tried to look at the Bible literally and interpret it and then live our lives accordingly. And obviously, that looks different for different people. But that was my background, very much in the Baptist church. But there's some contrast here because, as you introduce yourself, Eric, one thing I'll point out is that growing up, I was taught that Catholics were going to hell because, for a variety of reasons which we can get into. But give us a sense of who you are and your background. And I think it'll be a really interesting discussion thinking about just the Protestant faith from the Catholic angle, from the Baptist angle, and where we both are today. So, with that, take it away, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Rob, for having me on. It's a pleasure to speak with you. So my background is I'm what you call a cradle Catholic, and that means that you're born right into the Catholic faith. Yeah, I was born into Catholic conservative family. Right now, my age, I'm just about to turn 58. So um, I have been for most of my life living in the conservative Catholic way of life.
Hmm.
And I was always taught that this is the way it is. This is how you are supposed to live. This is how you're supposed to act and believe and pray and all that stuff. I've tried over my entire life to follow, believe, obey, do everything right according to the religion. But it wasn't until later on in life, probably maybe about a dozen years ago, is when things changed. And it was, I don't want to say it was an immediate stop and change, like there was a hard break. It was over time that led me to this changeover from being Catholic to being agnostic.
So, what do you think was maybe the first crack, right? Because it sounds like, and you gave me a couple of notes beforehand. I mean, you were very deep in the Catholic theology, even up to the point of teaching it to others, both kids and
Yeah.
adults. So, give me a little bit more of a sense about that. And what was the first crack that made you start to ask questions or look outside of what you'd always been told was absolutely true?
I always felt like, I wasn't as a child and as a young adult, I wasn't always I felt like I wasn't invested or in the religion as deep as I probably should be.
Hmm.
So I said, let me do things to try to get closer, to get more involved in the religion, to get closer to God and the faith. So I started doing things. I joined the Knights of Columbus. Do you know who
Okay.
the Knights of Columbus are?
I'm somewhat familiar, but fill folks in.
It's a group of men. It was started by a priest, and he said he wanted Catholic men to band together and help the community. It was mostly to help like widowed moms and it was mostly to help women and children who
Hmm.
needed help. So the men would band together and help them in the name of God, in the name of the church.
Yeah.
So I joined them and I said, okay, let me help give back to the community. And the Knights of Columbus are usually linked to a specific church. There's different the Knights of Columbus is one organization, but there's different I don't know what you call them, but there's different councils,
Okay.
and they link themselves to a specific church, and then they do things for that church. And then each church, not every church has one, but certain churches do.
Got it. Okay.
Anyway, so I joined them to try to help out. I one of the churches, I've moved around here there a bit, but one of the churches I belong to, I decided to start teaching Sunday school to the children. So I became a teacher there to try to, so let me see if I can influence kids while they're early on, so maybe it'll help them as they grow older to stay on the right path.
Yeah.
And then I moved and I went to another church and I said, okay, let me teach then. I didn't go back into teaching kids. I went to teaching adults. So there was, oh, I forget what it's called. But it's a adult education
Okay.
for people who want to come in to the Catholic faith. They
Hmm.
go through this very long, I think once a week training, and there's not just me as a teacher, as a for the children it was just me.
Yeah. Okay.
For the adults it's actually a group of us. So we would take turns teaching different aspects of the Catholic religion to them
Hmm.
so that they knew what they were getting into, because they could back out if they wanted
Yeah.
to. But we wanted to teach them this is everything that we follow.
Hmm.
So we would teach them that, and then at the end they would go through a whole um, thing at Mass where they all come up. It's almost like children go through, gosh, there's so many things I can't remember anymore.
It's like the confirmation process, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Children go through confirmation. This is sort of the same, it's very similar to that.
Okay.
And it's just okay, and it's in front of the congregation, they say, welcome these new Catholics.
Got it. It's like you now
And
know enough about the faith, you know enough about what just basically what Catholics subscribe to in order to be truly called a Catholic and a member of this congregation now. How
yep,
much of it was biblical versus more just tradition from the church?
it's mostly it, biblical was used to support what the church teaches.
Hmm.
So the traditions and the things that the Catholic Church follows, they used they used scripture to back it up,
Yeah.
to explain this is why, this is what we do, and this is why we do it.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
But so yeah, so where were we? So I was
So
teaching
yeah, going
teaching
down the
kids.
path of like what was
Yeah.
the first crack that made you start to question things?
So so here's the thing is that, and I also, besides that, I also went, and we can get into this later or now, whatever, but I also went on what you call a spiritual retreat.
Okay.
So I started reading as much as I could. I don't think I've ever actually read the Bible front to back, the whole thing. I've read a lot of it,
Hmm.
um, but there's still parts of it I haven't read. And but I tried to read as much as I kept saying, let me read more, let me read more. I would read during lunch and breaks and stuff. And I met this one person that said, oh, you should go on this retreat. So I went to Nebraska, and there was a little kind of a commune of monks and nuns that ran this little retreat place, and it was a silent retreat.
Hmm.
So you didn't talk. I went there for a week and you didn't talk the whole week.
Wow.
It was all just reading and trying to in your head, in your mind, in your heart, trying to silently get closer to God.
Hmm.
And they would also, talk. I had a mentor. He would talk to me. He would instruct me of what to do. You also had to do something called journaling. So
Okay.
whatever you were thinking, he says, don't think about it. Whatever pops in your mind, just write it down. Just write,
Hmm.
write, 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 write. Then he would look at it and he'd say, okay, here's what I see. This is you thinking. This is God talking to you. So some parts of it, they say you hear God talk to you in the silence of your heart. If you silence your heart, God can talk to you. If
Hmm.
you've got too many, that's why there's distractions all around us with work and TV and cars and life and family and friends and everything and news and politics. There's so much noise filling your heart, you can't hear God talk to you.
Hmm.
He talks to you in the silence. And I learned that, and it was like, oh, whoa, this is wild. Um, so with teaching and reading and getting involved in the church and going on a retreat and all, I felt like I was getting, really, really close to God. But the more I learned and read, and the more, if you were in my class, the more I tried to convince you
Okay.
about God and
Yeah.
teach you, the more questions I had,
Hmm.
the more it didn't make sense to me. I'm like, but wait a minute, I have questions. Who's going to answer my questions?
Yeah.
I'm trying to learn more and I'm trying to teach people, but how can I teach you when I don't even understand it myself?
Yeah.
Okay.
Y-
So So I had more and more questions the more I read and learned. And then there's other things that the Catholic Church does, which I don't quite understand. Like they will say these doctrines that we follow, they're inspired by God, they're from God. But then they go and change them at some point in time. Like, wait a minute, how can you change something that God made?
Yeah.
That God said, you do it this way, and said, no, no, well, we did it for a while, but we don't like it or whatever, so we're going to change it. That you can't do that.
No. No.
So,
N-
yeah,
No, it's funny. It's funny as you're talking, I'm just kind of reflecting a little bit because the questions that you had as you were trying to convince others of this truth of the Catholic Church. I've heard so many pastors and so many former pastors who felt the exact same way, right? Here I am in the pulpit up here preaching. I'm the man of God, right? God has revealed himself to me this week, and I'm now going to share that with you. And I had an opportunity because I went to Bible college. I was never a pastor. I was a youth pastor for a bit, but I got a chance to preach here and there. And as I would be researching and studying for my sermons, similarly to you, I'd run into these passages and I'm like, oh, this doesn't make a lot of sense, or this contradiction is pretty clear. And I've heard all the excuses of why this isn't a contradiction, and no, it is. Like those don't work. And so I think it's more common than people think that even your pastor has questions about the things he sees in the Bible, and even your pastor is less than convinced by some of the apologetics out there in trying to be able to support some of these doctrines. But it's funny to think about, like, so the seat that you're in when you're looking at it from the standpoint of these doctrines are given by God, like truly inspired by God, and then we're adjusting them over time. And it goes to show and it just illustrates that the clergy and the leadership are looking at and seeing there are issues, there are problems. We have to adjust these. Otherwise, like, what are the people going to say? So, did they try to justify that? Did you ask questions about that, or like how did that kind of end for you?
No, I didn't ask anybody. I didn't reveal what I was feeling to anyone.
Hmm.
I thought that there's nobody that would truthfully listen to me and help me understand it.
Yeah.
Because everybody that I was involved with was so deep into the religion. And it's what I call, to me, Catholicism, even Christianity, is what I call a blind faith.
Yeah.
Now, I had one person in one of my adult ed classes, and he was really pushing back. He absolutely didn't want to believe anything
Hmm.
because he's like, well, I would tell him stuff and he'd say, well, how do you prove this? How do you prove? He kept saying, show me, prove me. And I said, I can't. It's called a blind faith.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, I mean, he did it anyway. He went through and
Yeah.
became a Catholic anyway. I think just
Uh-huh.
because I think he was marrying a girl who was Catholic or something. So
Okay.
he went
Yeah.
through it
Didn't have a
anyway.
choice.
Right. But he really tried hard and he's like, I just don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. And that was kind of an eye opener where somebody said, prove it to me. And I
Yeah.
couldn't. I said, you have to have blind faith. Religion is pretty much blind faith. And he said, oh, well, of course, that's going to be, that's going to be the answer of everyone. Oh, blind faith, blind faith. We can't prove anything.
Yeah.
Um, I had another friend. I tried to. He was an atheist, and I tried to say, let me see if I can. I thought I had some pretty strong support
Yeah.
to help him convert,
Hmm.
or to bring him closer to the religion, to the faith. And I took him, we went out for dinner one night and we were just talking and talking, and I just laid it all out. I was putting it on strong that they're saying this, that, and the other. And he basically just said, I don't care. I don't want it. I don't care. I'm like,
Hmm.
what? What? How do I deal with this? Because he
Yeah.
was like, yeah, I'm not interested. He was
Hmm.
very nice about it. He says, you can believe and do whatever you want, but I'm not interested. I don't care, but thanks for trying.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't understand that.
Like, why wouldn't this person want the love of God, right? Like,
Right.
or do you know what the alternative is, right? And actually, here's a question I have for you because I've spent a lot of time in the Christian circles, but I don't know exactly what Catholics believe. But is there this concept that either you accept God and his son Jesus Christ, or you're going to end up burning in hell for eternity?
Yep.
Or do they walk away from that?
Nope.
It's
You're
the
right.
same thing. Yeah. Yeah. So then I get it. You're sitting there like, why would you want to burn in hell? As a matter of fact, I feel like where people end up going so often with that conversation is, what does it hurt to just follow God? Even if it turns out to not be true, at least like you don't lose anything, right? There's no
Right.
loss to you if this turns out not to be true. But if you're wrong, you're going to burn in hell for eternity. So that's why, and I've seen people try to motivate people that way. And it's that fear-based motivation that honestly, I think is the reason why 90% of Christians attend church or do anything.
Mhm.
They are scared of the wrath of God versus when you step out of that space and you start thinking about morality and not the things that I'm compelled to do or the person I'm compelled to be because I'm scared of what's going to happen to me otherwise, but am I just being a decent person? Am I loving my fellow man? Am I being
Mhm.
good to people with no motivation for either good or evil if I don't? Like that's such a different way of thinking about it, but so many people are told I'm gonna be like suffering for eternity in
Yep.
just agony and pain. Why the hell would I want that?
Yep. And that's exactly right. It is. fear motivated.
Yeah.
It's not, it should be love motivated,
Hmm.
which is what I think Jesus was teaching, is that you have to live and love everybody and everything. But we don't think that way. We think of either do this or else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even that is not enough to convince people, because there's sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No, you're fine.
Um, yeah, people will do things out of fear. Even now, I still have in the back of my mind that, well, what if I'm wrong
Yeah.
and all this is right, that I should be doing this, but there's not enough. I think the fear, the suffering and the fear and the bad things that happen, they're happening now.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, well, I don't know what's going to happen after I die, but I know what's happening now.
Yeah.
And fear and suffering motivates me now because I can feel it, I can experience it in my life. Not so much the love, because love, there's in the Catholic faith, there are rules regarding love and happiness and fun and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And a lot of it, a lot of it, they say, suffering is actually good, because God says suffering brings you closer to me. So that's
Yeah.
why you suffer now.
Yeah.
And that's why
Yeah.
bad things happen, because they're supposed to draw you to me. So I'm not sure why.
It's but
Uh,
it's a coping mechanism,
yeah.
right? Because humans for millennia have struggled with these questions of why am I here?
Mhm.
What's up with all this suffering around me? Why are things so bad for so many people? And then what happens when I die? To
Mhm.
me, those are the three questions that everybody considers at some point in their life. And religion of any kind typically is going to deal with all three of those. They're going to give you an answer to these unanswerable questions that people actually have. And so I'm this philosophy though of not being able to sit in that discomfort that says we don't know the answers to these questions. We don't know why we're here. We don't know what happens when we die, and suffering is all around us. But you can rationalize them all away, especially the human suffering part, if you say, but you'll go to a better place one day. And all of that was to bring you closer to God,
Mhm.
and it was justified. And they use the same thing to justify the slaughter of innocent women and children in the Bible and things along those lines where, hey, well, if those people actually are in a better place now, then I guess it was all okay.
Mhm.
And like it, I really feel like I understand why people believe because I was a believer. I want to believe today. I really do. I want these stories to be true, but I have become skeptical of everything I'm seeing, and the conclusion that I've come to is I still leave room for the miraculous. I don't say with 100% certainty that there is no God, no higher power, no creator. I don't say that. But the stories that have been told to me seem very unlikely. And I have evidence refuting all of those stories. So that you once you start to be a little bit more rational and not approach life from that fear state and not approach having to solve that fear state with the blind faith you were talking about, it does allow you to start to get a little closer to where your atheist friend was when he said, "Hey, that's all cool, but I'm not interested. Thanks.
Yep.
Thanks, Eric."
Yep. So yeah, they're the answers they have, they're not really answers. They're the answers they want to believe in.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, well, you know, my God is all loving and my God will do this and my God will do that. And he'll, he'll see that I've done well and I know that heaven and I know my mother passed or my grandmother passed and they're in heaven now watching. I'm like, but you
Yeah.
don't know that.
Yeah.
You you want to believe it, and if you want to believe that, that's fine, but you don't know with any guarantee or certainty that that's what actually happened.
No. But
So
you don't have to deal with the pain of the loss, right? It allows you to take this the gaping hole that it leaves in you when someone who you know and love is no longer here. They are gone. And you don't have to actually deal with that
no,
because you can believe that you'll see them again one day. It's almost like it just they 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 came up with just a way for people to cope with just the worst
yeah,
parts of life.
yeah, if you feel like they're in a better place where there's no pain and suffering,
Hmm.
and one day I'll see them again and we'll all be happy forever. Yeah, that's like a fairy tale ending.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But in reality, and so one of the reasons why I don't say I'm atheist, I say I'm agnostic.
Hmm.
And that's because I I don't know what's going to happen after this life.
Yeah.
Um, but and this is one of the things where one of the okay, so let me go back a little bit.
Yeah.
One of the other reasons why I I had a problem with the Catholic faith is because I married a Catholic woman and I thought, okay, once you're married, that's it. There's no divorce. It's divorce is against the Catholic faith.
Hmm.
So we're not going to get divorced. Even if you're unhappy, which we were unhappy, but it doesn't matter. You have to stick through it. You have to suffer through it to the end. There is no divorce. She's the one that instigated the divorce.
Hmm.
And when she's like, that's it, we're done. We hate each other. I'm divorcing us. I'm like, but how can you? It's against the religion, and you're a
Yeah.
strict religion. You're a strict Catholic, but she's the one that instigated it. So I said, okay, I'm not saying I'm innocent. We were both guilty, but we were just unhappy with each other. But she instigated the divorce. I thought, wait a minute, that goes against the faith. How is that possible? And then I met my current wife, who was much more open-minded to the
Hmm.
world and to things, and said, I don't know, she says, I don't know anything about, your religion or anything, but I mean, she knew some stuff, but
Yeah.
she felt like her belief was more of right now we are energy. We're in these human bodies, but we are still energy of the world.
Hmm.
Okay. And when this body fails, our energy will still go on and go to another existence. What that other existence is unknown. We could
Hmm.
be, maybe we go into another human body. Maybe we go into some other dimension or another realm of existence. But the energy that's within us transfers somewhere else, but
Yeah.
we don't know. So
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's an interesting way of thinking of it. And then, but when it comes to like the one single God
Yeah.
that everybody says is there, um, I don't see where. Oh, I say, well, the proof of God is, well, look around you. Look at the earth.
Hmm.
Look at the trees. Look at the complexity of the body. Uh, you know, and look at nature and look at everything. Look how everything just works
Yeah.
in um in a cycle, everything just works like clockwork. And I'm like, yes, okay, I will not disagree with you with that.
Sure.
Things were not just randomly appeared, pop, also there's a mountain, poof, there's a deer. So yes, I think things were created. Do I
Sure.
believe that there's a one almighty powerful God and it was the Christian God that did it? Don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no. There's no proof of that.
Yeah.
But I do feel like some higher being or some higher intelligence or even some higher energy created this.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
And
cre
I'm fine with that belief, right? Like for you to look around and see these things, I've heard the same arguments, and they're saying that is the proof for God. I always say the same thing. It's like, yeah, that stuff is interesting. We don't know how it happened. So it does leave room for the possibility that there is a higher power. There is a creator. That's a strong possibility. We don't know, we can't prove it. It's possible, but it doesn't make any sense to attribute all of that to this Middle Eastern Hebrew God from 4,000 years ago, right? That's where you lose me because you can say that a God exists. And here's the other thing. And I want to talk about, you know, uh, we'll probably wrap this session up in a few minutes and open up another, but I want to talk about hate because these other ideas of what could be out there, what you're describing now, what your wife is talking about, that is fine to have those belief systems. The problem with religion is that the belief system comes with strings attached that tells you how to live and who not to be like and who to hate, and sometimes who to kill. And religion has done so much harm. Man versus man. I've said this before. Bad people have been doing bad things for ever since man has been around. But it was religion that's made good people do bad things in the name of God, right? So talk to me a little bit about some of the hate that you experienced. I know you sent me some notes about this, but just that the church almost condones.
so Jesus apparently came down to fulfill the old scriptures and create one new faith, one new religion. If that's true, why are there so many Christian denominations?
Yeah.
Okay. One man came down to create one religion, but now we've got Catholics, Protestants, Baptists, evangelicals,
Hmm.
Methodists, Episcopalians, still the Jewish,
Yeah.
Jehovah's, blah, 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 blah. Because man did that. Man said, no, I don't. I like this what you say, but I don't like this. So I'm going to go this way.
Yeah.
Well, we like this, but we don't like that. So we're going that way. So now man created all of these sects, these divisions,
Yeah.
and and they say, okay, now we're going to make our own rules with it. We have this new religion, we have new rules. We say you believe this, but not that. You believe A, but not B, and the other one says, well, no, we believe B, but not A.
Yeah.
And with those comes, of course, because man made these religions, not Jesus or God, it comes with hate
Yeah.
because man, I think, has hate naturally in him.
Yeah.
So with me, yeah, I mean, look at the history of the Catholicism, like the Holy Wars and all. Oh,
Hmm.
God says we need to eliminate you because you're not following him.
Yeah.
Well, if that was the case today, almost everybody would be dead. So
Yeah. Yeah.
there wouldn't be any people left because everyone's killing each other because you don't believe my religion, so I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
But what some of the things I didn't like about the like going to church, people don't go to church to actually pray and get closer to God. I mean, maybe one or two do, but most people go as an obligation.
Yeah.
And when you go there, you're not really paying attention to what's going on. You're just going through the motions and you're actually looking around and you're judging other people
Yeah.
while you're there. Because you look around saying, "Oh, look what they're wearing. Oh, look, there's that girl I know. Oh, I heard, or there's that guy. Oh, I heard what they did. Oh,
Yeah.
look, rumor, spreading gossip, rumor. Oh, I
Yeah.
hate them. Oh, I hate that person. Let's not shake their hand,
Yeah.
or let's try to get at. Oh, God, I gotta meet the fellas later. Let's even cut out of here 10 minutes early.
Uh-huh.
Nobody will see us. Nobody. Let's sit in the back so nobody sees us leave." I one of the stories I want to share is when I was with the Knights of Columbus, I took on um, the responsibility. There's Christmas Mass
Okay.
and Easter Mass. Those were the two big masses that people would go to. If you didn't go the whole year, you went to those two masses to church. So because of that, there's like triple the amount of people that go to church, and parking was hell. So I uh, uh, volunteered to direct the traffic for the parking. So I would be out there, like if it's Christmas, midnight mass, I would be out there in the cold, in the snow, and whatever, directing cars. Say, park here, park here. Okay, now once they leave, you come in, and then we'll get you all parked and situated. And at one point, one time, because the parking lot was so small, we had to stadium park all the cars. And when you do that, you can't leave. You got to wait for it. You got to just relax, be patient, and wait for everybody to file out in the way you're supposed to, because if you're stuck all the way in the back, you're not going anywhere,
Yeah.
or in the middle. You've got the early leavers who say, "Oh, I'm going to get out of here in 10 minutes. I got to go, see the big game or whatever." They come out, their car is dead center in the middle of all the other cars around them. And they're like, "You got to get me out of here. You got to do something." I'm like, "Sir, what do you want me to do? I have to go into the church and say, everybody who's parked in front of this person, give me your car keys so I can move you. You
Yeah.
just have to be patient and wait." They were so angry with me because their car was stuck and they wanted to leave early. I'm
Yeah.
like, "What is wrong with you?
Yeah.
You just came out of church.
Right. The love of
It's
Christ.
Christmas. It's supposed to be love of humanity and everything, and oh my, and then you come out of here, good God,
Yeah.
cursing and everything." I'm like, "Wow, you shouldn't have even come."
Yeah. We can't get the people who go even to the same churches to love each other. You talked
Yeah.
about it, right? The judgment that goes on there. And then those denominations, all the differences there, studying this in school, most of those denominations came from an interpretation of one specific doctrine that they felt was important enough that it had to do with whether or not you had true salvation or not. And so one group goes one way, the other group goes the other way. When these denominations split, the thought of those in one versus the other is that they are going to hell. They got
Mhm.
this wrong. They're practicing the wrong doctrine. Within the Baptist church, there's over 32 different sects of the Baptist church who
Wow.
all talk about the other denominations. The Independent Baptists talk about the Southern Baptists, and they all think that they're getting something vital wrong, which is the whole reason to have a denomination in the first place.
Mhm.
Now, I don't know enough about the other big global religion, Islam, but from the outside looking in, they seem a lot more um, uh, just kind of able to rally the troops around a single a single idea. I know you've got some extremists. I'm not talking about those, right? But in
Right.
terms of what Islam actually is, and when they talk about Christians, and I've had chats with some of my Muslim friends who are like, you guys don't even know what you believe. You guys can't decide what Christianity actually is.
Well,
And the amount of hatred that you have for
hmm,
other Christians, people who claim to have Jesus Christ as their personal Lord and Savior, and like the hatred that you have for them, like we don't know what that's about. I just find that fascinating, and I think it's an appropriate place to look at wrapping this section of the conversation, but I want to give you the last word before I close things out. So, as you're thinking about this section of the conversation, anything else you'd like to share with folks here today, Eric?
it is funny that Catholics do not like other Christian denominations. They
Yeah,
think they're wrong. They think they got it, the basis down, but not the full. They don't experience everything. Catholics believe like everything, every little silly thing that they throw out there. This is what we believe. And if you don't believe that, you're missing out.
yeah.
And so you're not getting the full experience of Jesus and God. So I'll end with a joke.
Okay.
So there's a guy that dies and goes to heaven, and he sees St. Peter at the pearly gates because St. Peter has nothing else to do but sit at the gates all day long. So, and Peter says, "Okay, come, I'll show you around the place. It's really nice up here." So, they go down this like long hallway, and there's like doors on both sides of the hallway, and all the doors are open. They pass by the doors, and there's people in there laughing and having a good time and enjoying life. And they're like, and he's like, "Who's that?" I said, "Oh, that's the Protestants. They have a good time." And then come over. "Oh, who are those? Oh, those are the Baptists over there. Oh, those are the Methodists." Then they get to a door that's closed, and he's like, "Shh," and they tiptoe, "Don't be quiet." And they tiptoe past the door. The door doesn't have like a window on it, it's just a solid door.
Yeah.
And they go past it. And then once they get past it, he says, "Okay." And he's like, and the guy's like, "What was that all about?" He says, "Oh, those are the Catholics. They think they're the only ones here."
Yeah. What's what's so funny about that is as you're sharing it, that could be true for you could almost choose any denomination and tell that story as it relates to the others because it literally is so much the case. So, look, this has been enjoyable. We're gonna do this conversation in two parts. So we're gonna end part one here, but when we come back for part two, I think the theme we're gonna be talking about there is what would it take for Eric and Rob? What would it take for us to actually believe? And there's some questions I think we're going to start with. The first one will be, why doesn't God reveal himself to us? Right? Because it happened in other places. So I think it'll be an interesting conversation. We're going to end part one here, and then we'll come back with part two and have that bigger conversation. So thanks again for joining us. Another episode of Faith in Question. If you enjoyed this conversation, tell us in the comments. If you have different ideas or thoughts, make sure those are in there and make sure you continue to subscribe to the channel for more content and conversations just like this.